This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to another edition of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon here on Westwood One. Joining me this episode from Thin Lizzy, it is drummer Brian Downey. He has a new band called Alive and Dangerous. And on the other side, I have got Tony Banks, formerly perhaps or currently of Genesis, depends who you ask and what day of the week. He's got a new album called Five, done with the Czech National Symphony Orchestra Choir. Huh? How's that? And speaking of glorious, Tony Banks' new album Five, featuring the Czech National Symphony Orchestra and Choir, is out now. And here is the one, the only, Tony Banks. We are speaking with Tony Banks. Is it formerly of Genesis or currently of Genesis? How do we describe that?
Well, I think if Genesis still exists, I'm still there. You know, we're never quite sure whether we exist or not. We describe ourselves as mothballed.
Mothballed.
But,
yeah.
Mothballed, that's what we are, yeah.
And the new album is Five, the third classical album by Tony. By the way, great pleasure to speak with you. And we'll talk about Invisible Touch later, but that album in 1986 was sort of my everything for that year. So we'll talk about that later, but...
All right, sure.
Five, this new album, the classical album, talk to me about working with the
Czech Symphony Orchestra, National Symphony Orchestra.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've got so many things going through my head. The Czech National Symphony Orchestra, and just sort of putting together the album and doing this classical stuff, because we all know that you've been known for progressive rock and Genesis since even the late 60s, early 70s. Talk to me about this album and putting it together.
Well, in a way, working with an orchestra, in this kind of way is not so dissimilar from the early days of progressive rock, the things I was involved with, really. The way I did this particular record, though, was to kind of use my demos as a kind of template, if you like, which is something I've done with Genesis and with solo music over the years many times, where you record a basic track, if you like, with piano. In this particular case, it was piano and quite an elaborate kind of degree of arrangement as well. And then we would add all the instruments, if you like, separately. Well, we do strings all in one go, obviously, and then the woodwind in one go, and the brass and all that, and then do the soloists as well. So we had a trumpet player and a sax player, and also percussion and a harp, all playing individually, which gives me the ability to kind of scrutinize each part, if you like, and then you put the whole thing together, a bit like you do with I've done with Genesis tracks over the years, and when you play it all back together, it all works as one. I was able to do this really because the original demos I did had quite elaborate arrangements on them already, so that when we were adding the new instruments, you could play to my arrangement, and it would sort of make sense. It's the first time I've done that on a classical record, to do it this particular way, but I find it a very satisfying way to work because you end up with a result that is much closer to what you originally intended, I think.
Yeah, it really is. Now the last three releases, including 6 pieces for orchestra and 7, a suite for orchestra going back to 2004, have all been classical. Is this sort of the direction you see yourself going in for the future, or would you like to get back to a band situation, a Genesis situation, or even come out and do a pop record at some point? Or is it sort of like, no, this is it?
No, I don't make any assumptions about that. I mean, after I'd done 7, I had sort of quite a strong urge to have, play with drums again, But then we did the tour, the last Genesis sort of revival tour back in 2007, and, a year and a half of 2 drummers banging away sort of kind of satisfied my yearning for drums again a little bit. So the next thing I did was another orchestral piece. I find it just sort of comes naturally to me to do this, and but I would certainly don't rule out the idea of doing sort of songs again with drums and everything. I love doing that. It's just at the moment what I've kind of got an opening, if you like, in this in the classical world a little bit. The first piece on this record, which is called Prelude to a Million Years, was originally written for a music festival over here because I was asked to compose a piece for it, and what was quite a prestigious music festival. So, that was kind of quite a nice thing to be asked to do, and it sort of kind of keeps the door open a little bit in this particular world. But, I don't rule anything else out.
Creatively, when you're putting together a classical piece and creatively when you're putting together a Genesis piece, for you, is it the same approach in terms of I start the song this way and I finish it, or how does it differ in terms of the process for you?
Well, I think the main difference when you're working in this sort of area, you kind of feel less. There's no constrictions on you at all. You can do what you like, really. And I'm naturally quite a long-winded sort of person, quite rambly sort of person, I suppose. And so, I can go for 15 minutes quite happily, going through various changes and everything. And it works for me in a way. That's kind of what we did early days in Genesis. We did a lot of that kind of thing. And I'm very comfortable with that. I also love writing sort of like a concise 3 or 4 minute song as well, don't get me wrong, but it's a different approach. And that always requires slightly more discipline in a way. Whereas this, I can do what I like. I can go anywhere. I can play any chord I like. I can change tempo. I can, go loud. I can go soft when I choose. So I can write something that just is a total expression of how I feel at that particular time. And I do love doing that. So I get great pleasure out of writing these pieces, really. And I've been lucky that I've had a certain degree of response over here, anyhow, for these pieces. And, slightly beyond perhaps the Genesis crowd and into the classical world slightly.
Yeah, it's got to be nice to be picking up new fans at this point. Now, the album comes out February 23rd. Do you see yourself bringing this on the road? Now, of course, it's not. You can't just sort of show up in a bar or at an arena But is there some kind of hope to get this to North America, to get it to Canada, and present this around Europe?
Well, my attitude a little bit is this: I'd love someone else to do it. Really, the music is. Well, look, I've got the record out there; it's out there, and I don't feel any particular. Obviously, I don't rule out the idea that I might be involved in a production of it, if you like. But it could be done by anybody, in a way, and it'd be quite fun to. I just like other people to sort of to use it in programs in a way, because when you go to classical concerts, when I've been to classical concerts, very often they have a piece in there that is one piece you didn't necessarily go to see. You kind of go to see whether it's sort of Beethoven's Fifth or something, but suddenly you have another piece at the beginning, which is one you didn't know you were going to hear, and you hear it and you really like that, and it sets you off somewhere. And I feel, maybe that could happen for me with one of these pieces. Could be played as a sort of an opening piece to a concert or something. There is the alternative, obviously, of going out there and playing the whole thing to people, but I always feel you're going to then be preaching to the converted in many ways, and it'd be nice to be able to kind of win people over who didn't perhaps know that they could like this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I've had a chance actually to hear it, and it's actually very peaceful. It puts you in a very sort of peaceful mood. I love that. That's what I like about music, just to get you in that happy place. Let me quickly talk about Genesis here and Invisible Touch. Like I said, it was sort of the soundtrack to high school for me.
So it's the age, you see. I always ask people what their favorite album, what age were they when their favorite album was kind of released. It sounds to me like you're probably something around sort of mid-teens or something, yeah?
At that time, yeah. Now I'm 50, but then I was.
No, I know, but then you see, that's
yes.
The point.
What was I?
It's always the album that people tend to sort of like, because obviously you've had albums over the years, and people say, well, that's my favorite album, and you think. Anyhow, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, it is the one that spoke to me, but also if you look back at, the Wind and Withering, Trick of the Tail, it is very different. It is certainly more of a foray into, I don't want to call it pop, but more sort of commercial music. How do you... Right.
More pop.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, we were kind of, I think when we came out of the 70s, I think we felt we'd sort of gone about as far as we could with the progressive thing, and we wanted to try and do other things. We were basically writers more than anything else, and the idea of trying to sort of be a little more concise and to try and avoid doing some of the things that we'd done many times before, the usual sort of reprising songs and the sort of big chorus and all the rest of it, to try and something. And Abacab was very much what we decided to try and change a little bit, and then. Obviously, Invisible Touch was 2 albums after that, and I think by that time got quite good at writing pop songs, which was something we never really thought we'd sort of be as good at doing. We were lucky, obviously, that Phil had become such a star in his own right. That did help us quite a bit, I think. But the songs on the album are very much group-written songs, and I think we just were lucky that we got very concise moments. I think particularly proud of songs like Land of Confusion, which kind of, and Throwing It All Away and everything, which are kind of very simple songs in a way, but but really work in a short format. Having been a person, who's perhaps more comfortable writing 25-minute songs, but it's very exciting. If you can get it all done in 3 or 4 minutes, then that's very exciting too.
It is, and yet my favorite track on there is Tonight, the longest.
Well, it's a long track, you see.
Yeah, the second longest. Do you miss playing those songs? Do you miss getting? I mean, it's been since 2007. It's been 11 years. Do you miss getting out on the road and playing Land of Confusion, Visible Touch? That's all, and all the Genesis songs.
Well, I can't say I really do. I mean, I look back on it with a lot of fondness, and I really enjoyed the time we did, and I particularly enjoyed that tour, the revival tour, because there was sort of no pressure on us, really. We didn't have anything to prove. We were just going to play the songs, and the people who liked us were going to come and see us, and people who didn't like us wouldn't come, and that was fine by us. I don't have a particular sort of thing about playing live, really. I'm more interested in writing music than I am in playing it. But having said that, if I go to someone else's concert and I sort of see the stuff and you go backstage and you meet people and you think, there's a sort of part of me that would quite like to have done it. It's a part of my past, but it's not crucial to me. I don't feel I don't yearn to do it in the way that some people, I feel there are certain people who live for the road, really, and I'm not one of those people.
Okay, so you mentioned that you're more interested in just writing music. Does it have to be for you just for an album, or would you be interested? Because the last time I spoke to Anthony Phillips, he's doing a lot of library music.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Would you be more into doing library music and soundtracks and just ad placement, or does it have to be a creative album, a whole sort of piece?
No, it certainly doesn't have to be. I'm not sure about library music and stuff. I like, music for me. I'm amazed that Anthony, he's happy doing just that, really, because that's his main thing now, I know. It means your music is heard a lot, but nobody kind of knows it's you. I'm very happy to do smaller projects. It doesn't have to be a big project, but to me, it's the writing and the creating and the realization of that thing that I enjoy doing the most. And certainly want to carry on doing that, but it doesn't have to be in a sort of full-blown thing at all. I would happy to do smaller things, but it's a question really of what you're asked to do and what you're offered to do. If you're working in the world of, you mentioned library music or ads or kind of soundtracks or anything, then you've really got to be kind of approached a bit, really. Someone's got to want to use you, and that hasn't really come my way. But you have to, sometimes I'm asked to do things, some things I do and some things I don't.
Well, it certainly would be interesting to have you score some soundtracks. Calling All Stations, which is currently the last album that you've put out as Genesis. Talk to me about that album and that decision to bring in a new singer, to bring in Ray. Good decision, bad decision, it is what it is.
Well, I think you're right. It is what it is in a way. we kind of, I think when Mike was actually quite keen to do a record with a new singer. And I was a bit I thought, I wasn't sure about it really. I think Phil's gone, that's going to be quite tough. Anyhow, we started writing together and we got some stuff together we thought was quite good. So then we looked for a singer and we found Ray and everything. And, I think the project had its sort of good side, if you like. I think the live band was great. I really enjoyed, we had Nia Zidiaku in the drums and Anthony Drennan on guitar, and I think the band was really good. And I think Ray had a great voice, but it perhaps didn't suit every piece of music we had. And I think trying to fill Phil's sort of boots was a very difficult job, and it was a slightly depressing period in the group's history, I think. It wasn't our greatest album, but it's got some good tracks on it, I think. And I feel that, the tour we did afterwards was the people who came, I think, enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to do, but it was, it wasn't our sort of high point, really. And it was kind of after that I thought, well, maybe I'll give up. Maybe that's it. I'll hang my boots up and call it a day. But then I thought to myself, one thing I'd really like to do is an album with an orchestra, because I'd thought about it many years before, and I'd done a soundtrack for a film which had orchestral music in it. And so that's what led to, kind of a slight revival for me, really, in a way. Did the album 7 back in 2002 or something. And, and I've managed to do 2 since then, which is this album 5, which is the latest one. And it just gave me a kind of new lease of life in a way. And, of course, in the middle of all that, we did a Genesis kind of revival tour with Phil coming back and singing and playing drums. And it was kind of like old times, really, which was great fun to do.
The business of Genesis continues. Is there, and of course you had the archive box set that came out not too long ago. Is that something that will continue? Will we see other releases from the band down the road? DVDs, shows, live albums, anything?
Well, there's, in a way, I think when, the band itself is really not so keen on this kind of stuff, but I know that record companies and managers love it, and some elements of the audience love it as well. I always feel it's kind of like you're just trying to kind of fleece the audience a bit when you put out, because we've really got nothing new to offer. It would just be new live versions, if you like, of pieces and new shows and stuff like that. But they're all kind of, there's no new music to come, and in a sense that's what interests me is new music, if there was any new music, and there isn't. We've raided the archives. There's nothing left. There really is nothing left. The cupboard is bare. So, but when you say will there be other things, there probably will be other things, because we can't stop them.
The record company is always willing to come.
Well,
they
are, and I know that some people love all this stuff, and we've got the BBC over here has got lots of archives of stuff we've done over the years, which is obviously it's never been released, a lot of this stuff, but it is just other versions of the same songs. There's nothing new.
Talk to me about the album The Fugitive. You got to sing on that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about putting your voice to record, and would you consider doing another vocal record, another album where we would have your voice on it?
I don't think I want to sing again, really. I mean, I enjoyed doing that, and it was a good experience, really, because it taught me a lot about singing, in a way, and what I was putting the other guys through, and I said to Phil, sing that note, so do that, and then I sort of, when I did my own record, I kind of did, when I sang my own things, I did simplify the melodies quite a lot and do it slightly differently. It was a good experience for me, and I think it wasn't too bad, and I kind of I'm very glad to have done it, but I'm not really looking to do it again. No, I think there's so many great singers out there. Why not use one of them? Why use me? It's a sort of I'm not a great singer. People quite like hearing, I think, a person singing their own songs, and that's why it's quite nice to have done it. But I don't crave doing it again.
Well, I think some of us would love to hear that again. Mike and the Mechanics, Mike Rutherford released an album, Let Me Fly, in 2017. You've got 5 this year. You're obviously both still creative, still making music. Do you see yourself working together again in any capacity, even if it's not a Genesis project, even if it's just two guys doing a classical album or a pop album, or would you work with the guys?
We never rule anything out. I mean, I see Mike quite a lot, and we obviously still get on very well and everything. And I think, but I sort of, I don't really think it's very likely. I mean, it's like with Phil obviously is kind of like not. He can't sort of do quite what he used to do in the old days. He can still sing and he can still write, I'm sure. But so any combination is very unlikely, I think, in a way. I mean, Mike and I, who knows? I mean, if something came up and said, "Oh, let's do this together," we wouldn't say no necessarily. I mean, we're kind of, we're still compatible writers, and we've gone very much in opposite directions at the moment. I mean, Mike's gone to, very much to a sort of the pop area, and I've gone very sort of much to the classical area.
Yeah.
So, we're quite a long way apart at the moment, but we have a lot of points of contact, and we still like a lot of the same music, and we like what each other does and everything. So, but there's no plans, certainly no plans to do that, but we never rule it out.
It'd certainly be nice. I just want to talk about quickly the history of Genesis in its longitudinal 67, 69. You formed the band. Anthony is there with you. When members started switching in and out, when Anthony leaves, Steve Hackett comes in, Peter Gabriel leaves. Talk to me about some of those times and just how it was to sort of stay focused and stay moving forward. Was there at any point when, Peter Gabriel leaves, for example, you just say, wow, we can't do this. We got to pack it. I mean, talk to me about sort of staying focused and keeping the band moving forward.
The only time I thought really of that we shouldn't, the band wouldn't continue was when Anthony Phillips left, because, the four of us have been together. It seemed a long time. I know it's not that long if you look at the history of it, but felt a long time. And we very much sort of like, we played off each other, and we were sort of like, we felt we had something between the four of us, And so when Anthony left, I thought we might not continue. But, I think interestingly enough, Richard MacPhail, who was our sort of friend and helper in those days, was the one who really persuaded us, I think, that we should keep going, that we had something going, we should keep going. And, Mike and Pete and I talked about it. And I think we just felt that, let's do it. The only thing I said at the time was I thought we ought to get a new drummer, because I felt the drummer we had at the time, John Mayhew, was really not good enough, for what we were trying to do. So we decided we'd get a new drummer, and obviously that's when we got Phil, and he ended up being a whole lot more than a drummer, obviously, but he was a fantastic drummer as well, and took the band onto a new level, I think. So, that we kind of discovered that, and then obviously later when Peter left, I think we were very determined to try and keep on one way or another, and obviously we were lucky to be able to replace Peter essentially with Phil, so that was easy. And then, by the time Steve left, although it was a bit of a blow, was nevertheless, we kind of got used to it by then. So, the three of us, I think, worked very well together. So that was a very happy period, I think, that period from when we worked as a three-piece, which obviously from then there were three right through to We Can't Dance, and happy times for us, really. So we seem to sort of, I think these things happen over a period of time, and you sort of work out a way of doing it, and it seems to work okay.
Yeah, and happy times for me because it gave me Invisible Touch. Right? And I know that we've only had 20 minutes, so it was a bit of a sprint today, but is 5 sort of the last album you plan on making, or are you going to stay creative and you're already working on the next new album?
God knows. I'm not working on the next one, but knowing how these things are, it may well not be the last. You can't get rid of me that easily. No, I think that, I'm very happy with this, and, if it was the last thing I ever did, I'd be very happy with it. But, I know what I'm like. And, you sit down and start writing some stuff, and things happen, and who knows? Maybe something else will happen. I mean, it's not, I have no particular thoughts about it. Obviously, I'm, not getting any younger, as it were. And, but I still feel, the creative sort of spirit is still with me. I still have the desire to do it, and still enjoy doing it. So I hope there'll be more.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for all the music over the years. And next time, hopefully, we'll get an hour. This was like a sprint for me today, but thank you for everything. Great pleasure.
Okay, great.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.